What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the StatShot Hockey Podcast. Nice to be back after about a month off here for us. We've had a busy month here, so we've been a little bit behind on content, but we're happy to catch back up today and get everybody up to speed with what's been going on in the NHL. I'm your host, Spencer Brown, joined by my co-host, Nick Vogel. Nick, how we doing?
I'm doing well, Spence. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting month without us being on the pod, which has been a little detrimental considering the big storylines, but we're jumping back in today with a lot going on. We've got a top prospect call-up. We've got some drama with some NHL superstars. We've got some outdoor games to discuss, and then some of our general stuff that we go through every week and every episode, like stock up, stock down, and some players that we've been watching the past few weeks. So let's jump right into it. I think the biggest storyline coming into this episode and from this past weekend had to be the outdoor game. So what was your review on everything that went down in Lake Tahoe this weekend?
Obviously, it was disappointing to see the 9 hours between the first and the second period in the first game, but given the circumstances in the venue, I thought it was super impressive for the league. I thought the views were incredible. It wouldn't surprise me to see them do something like that again, but the first game was a really good game against two teams, and then the second game, not so much, but, with Voracek, Giroux, and a few others like Lindholm out, you kind of knew that was what was going to happen.
Yeah, that second game was a little tough. The Bruins end up with a 7-3 win over the Flyers, but like you said, the Saturday game obviously went through a little bit of turmoil there with 3 o'clock Eastern start. They played the first period. The sun was causing some issues with the ice, and I really thought it was tough with the glare throughout the game as well, and there was a little bit of issue with that as well in the Sunday game. But yeah, they reconvene on Saturday at midnight Eastern time, and what a performance from the Avalanche, honestly. I think these two are probably the two best teams in the league, in my opinion. I know the Maple Leafs have given a good shout, and the Bruins obviously were very impressive as well on Sunday. But I think top to bottom, when fully healthy, Vegas and Colorado are really stacked, and this was on display. And there was not a better clip from the weekend than the Alex Pietrangelo response to Nathan MacKinnon, because that just has to be how everyone in the league is feeling when this guy's playing at this level, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not something you want to see coming down on the wing with speed, and obviously the elite shot he has.
He was just bearing down on him, and I don't know any defenseman or goalie who had a chance there. So,
oh boy,
we're recording. Yeah, oh boy, we're recording live here as we're actually watching Vegas and Colorado on Monday night. Colorado currently in a 3-0 hole. Alex Tuch has a goal and an assist for Vegas. Marc-Andre Fleury has been outstanding again. He has just been off to an unbelievable start. But I know you had one thing from the outdoor game that was on your mind and kind of wanting to change up, not the scenery, but somewhat the scenery.
Yeah, it seems like the same teams get to play in this, showcase game every year. And I totally get that with the size of the fan bases and, the prestige that these teams have. But I don't know. I would like to see some, different matchups. I'm tired of honestly seeing the Bruins and the Flyers. It was cool to see Vegas and Colorado. I think Colorado's played in 2.
I think they had a Stadium Series game as well. So,
but I thought it would have been a cool thing to do, Wild versus Jackets. Obviously, that couldn't happen because they're in different divisions this year, but something like that going along with their 20th year anniversary. But, yeah, I guess you have to be good to get in those games. So
it kind of says everything, though. I saw a stat that James Van Riemsdyk, who has played his whole career between Philadelphia and Toronto, just played in his 7th outdoor game, and I think that just says everything right there. And like you said, it does come back to the prestige of the team and the national fan base, so they're always going to get the preferential treatment and the first dibs on those games. But another sense, there's so many venues, and I know locally a lot of people talk about having a game at the Horseshoe, Ohio Stadium, and seeing Columbus play there. But, I think there's a lot of cool opportunities the NHL can explore with some franchises that have not been able to get outdoor games.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the Jackets in an outdoor game. I think the only possibility of them playing in one is on the road. I think that they would really struggle to fill up the shoe. 100,000 people. It's kind of stinks to say it, but you'd have to partner it up with OSU somehow. Maybe have OSU Michigan hockey and then, an NHL game after that. But I don't know, maybe if you got a team like Pittsburgh or Detroit in there, they could help fill the building, but I don't see it. I think it would make sense to play maybe Detroit or even Pittsburgh, like I said.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll hope to see some different matchups moving forward, but definitely a note to the NHL that I think the viewers are ready to see something a little different, and that's nothing against these teams because there was obviously some elite talent on display, but it's nice to change it up every now and then. So we'll move on now to our next biggest piece, and that is the debut of super prospect Trevor Zegras tonight, which we are also watching along live with right now. He has really been electric so far in his first period and a half in the NHL, and I think this is everything we expected after his performance in December at the World Juniors.
Yeah, he's looked really good, albeit it's been limited so far. At the end of the first period, I don't know if he was scratched or benched, but he did get skipped over a few times, playing with Silverberg and Sam Steele, but he ended up playing in the power play at the end of that period, so I don't know what was up with that. But yeah, he's looked dangerous in terms of his passing ability. I'd like to see him get a chance to shoot. But, you got to be excited as a Ducks fan. This has been a team that, in my opinion, hasn't been so fun to watch. And, with Henrique going down, I think that he could shore up the center position down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, it's been a little bit shaky at 5-on-5, and I wonder if they're trying to protect him a little bit. But definitely on the power play, they've been playing him in that right circle spot. And, he's been kind of drifting down to the bottom of the circle, and he had 2 or 3 cross-crease passes, almost no-look passes to Ricard Raquel. One of them was a great save by Darcy Kemper, but he did get a plus on his second NHL shift on a goal by Jakob Silverberg. And, he's been pretty impressive, albeit the circumstances and how they're trying to shelter his minutes.
Yeah, he's been off to a hot start in the AHL this year. 9 points in 8 games, plus 4 and 8 penalty minutes. But something that I kind of thought about earlier this year, and I wanted to pick your brain about, do you think that it is less impressive putting up those numbers in the AHL this year because of the taxi squad? A lot of guys that you would consider to be in top 6 positions in the AHL are up with their NHL teams to provide that depth. So you might see a little more of ECHL caliber players in that league.
I think it's definitely fair to consider, and I'm not sure that I had really thought about it from that perspective, but there definitely are some taxi squad guys who would be point-per-game players in the AHL. But I think from a guy like Zegras' perspective, in his first chance playing pro hockey, regardless of the competition, in the sense that he's really playing against grown men for the first time, it's got to be impressive. And I really think from the stance that you have to think some of those AHL guys see him down there, and it's almost a target on his back when he's playing against some guys who may never get a chance at the NHL, and this is their shot to face a guy who has a potential to be a superstar down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It's funny to watch that team. The top 2 scorers on that team are first-round picks from the last 2 years. And Jamie Drysdale is a point per game down there as a defenseman, and in my opinion, probably will be called up soon. I don't know why you wouldn't. He looks like he can fit in. Sorry, I just got distracted by an almost goal there. But, yeah, it looks like somebody that could fit in right now. And I think that, with a fresh season, maybe next year, having those 2 young, exciting prospects on your team, it could put people in seats, especially for a team that's not looking to really compete right now.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting look. If you have Drysdale, Zegras, and who knows, maybe they get a Matty Beniers, maybe they get a Kent Johnson, someone along those lines, an exciting prospect to pair with those guys who could be ready.
Good.
Max Comtois has looked very impressive, and I know one guy who was catching my eye earlier before we started the show was Max Jones, who's still a young forward. So this team, like you said, it hasn't been the most exciting start to 2021, but I think within the next 2 years, this is going to be a pretty exciting team to watch in all facets.
We got a lot of development program USA Americans on that team.
Troy Terry as well. So a lot of World Junior heroes in Anaheim. So we'll move on to our next biggest story, and this kind of came out today. Rangers forward Artemi Panarin will be taking what we believe is about a 2-week leave of absence from the team after some allegations of domestic violence came back from Russia. Panarin had been outspoken in his disbelief in Vladimir Putin's ability to run the country. Obviously, we don't want to delve too deep into everything on that front. Not super educated on the topic, but there are a lot of reports about his alleged abuse, and it took place in 2011 when he was an 18-year-old against a woman at a bar in Russia, and allegedly, and there have been numerous reports coming out as well saying everything is fabricated and that it's a government hit piece out to get Panarin because of his support for another Russian political candidate who I believe survived an assassination attempt. So there's been some really shady surroundings with this whole thing, but obviously our thoughts and prayers are with the girl who is alleged to have been abused, if that is what took place, but also Artemi Panarin and his family and their safety through these times. But this kind of just adds to a turbulent start to the year for the Rangers, right?
Yeah, it's like just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. Like you said, I don't want to get too much into the politics of it, but I respect Panarin using his platform to try to implement change for that country and what he thinks is in the best interest of the people there. But yeah, it's real interesting how, you have a lot of Russians, elite level guys like Ovechkin, Tarasenko, Panarin, and they all are pretty open about how they feel politically. And a lot of them don't agree. It's interesting, but it's fascinating at the same time, and I'm excited to see people like that use those platforms as a way to generate conversation about change.
Yeah, absolutely. So we won't spend too much time there, but definitely something notable that needs to be discussed when talking about the league today. So like we said, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone involved. Hopefully everyone can remain safe. So we'll move on to, this was, in my opinion, the biggest story of the weekend, probably almost outweighing the outdoor game. Connor McDavid, obviously the forefront, probably the face of the NHL at the moment. 5 points Saturday night in the Battle of Alberta against the Calgary Flames. Finishes with a hat trick and 2 assists. He is now up to 37 points in 20 games. He last week reached 500 points in 369 games, which actually equaled 500 points in the same amount of games as Sidney Crosby, which is just insane considering the similarities between these two guys. But his pace right now, he's got 37 points in 20 games. Could we be looking at an 80, 90-point season in a 56-game season?
I don't see any reason why not. Obviously, he's the best player in the world, and if you want, you put him with Draisaitl, and the line's pretty much unstoppable. So just the speed that he has is an advantage no matter who's on the ice. You could have the best defenders in that division, Riley, whoever.
Shea Weber.
Yeah. And it doesn't really matter. The guy finds a way to score. I think he's been putting up around 3.5 shots per game, as well as, making plays, passing the puck. I don't want to say that he's better than Crosby was at his age, but he can definitely take over a game in an instant. He only needs one chance to score. I mean, Crosby obviously is similar in that aspect, but he's more of a grinder, I would say.
They can take over games.
He has to work harder to score, if that makes sense.
They can take over games in different ways.
Yeah.
I'd say McDavid definitely is more of a game breaker.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like McDavid, the Oilers could be outplayed the entire game, and then he gets one step on a guy and goes down and wins the game for the team,
Absolutely. And, I mean, it's literally a human highlight reel. Every single night, it seems like he does something in the sense that, wow, You just don't see that in every NHL game. And I don't want to say Sidney Crosby has done ordinary things in his career, because that is very far from true. But there's just something about McDavid's play style, between not only his hand-eye coordination and vision, but the fact that he is doing it at a higher speed than anyone else in the league just is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, the goal that he scored the other night, not even looking at the net, is... how many people can do that? Probably him, Kane, and maybe
Matthews?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess the only other question with them is, how sustainable is it? So Edmonton currently sitting at 12-8, second in the North Division, only to the Maple Leafs. Do we think it's sustainable? They've got him and Draisaitl playing between 23 and 26 minutes a night, which is absurd for a forward. We were talking earlier, Darnell Nurse has a couple 30-minute games under his belt recently. Trust me, they are a fun team to watch, fun team to bet on if you like taking overs. I just don't know sustainability-wise, and it's pretty evident just looking at last year against Chicago in the play-in round. I just don't know how sustainable it is long-term.
They are not built to go far in the playoffs. They're an exciting regular season team, but all you need to do is shut down McDavid. Like, they don't have any depth scoring on that team. You shut down Draisaitl and McDavid, and albeit that's an extremely difficult challenge, but like, if you look at the Bruins, you put Bergeron, Pasta, and Marchand on that line, contain McDavid, and then have Krejci or somebody versus the second line. Who's going to score to beat you?
Nobody. And that's the thing is, I really do like some of their additional pieces. I think Puljujarvi's come on pretty well. Yamamoto's come into his own.
Nugent Hopkins is a good player.
Yeah, Nugent Hopkins is a very good second-line center, but it's kind of at the point where all of their production is coming at the hands of Draisaitl and McDavid. And I don't have an exact number on that, but it would be very interesting to look at the percentage of assists on those guys' goals that are coming from those two superstars. So I don't know. It's very hard to determine how sustainable it is, but I think come playoff time, it's pretty easy to rule them out long term. But for McDavid's sake, I really hope they can make a run, because that guy's earned it. And, I feel like it's pretty easy. He's an easy guy to root for, in my opinion. And, you want to see guys like that stick around as long as possible. So, well, we'll wrap up this episode with just a stock up, stock down session. Could be teams, players, anything really. Even a division if you want to go that far. But we'll start with stock up. Who do you got?
I have Carter Verhaeghe for the Florida Panthers. This guy has been on an absolute tear for them. Actually drafted by Toronto. I don't know if you knew that.
I knew he was with Tampa, but I did not know he was drafted by Toronto.
Third-round pick from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Played with Tampa last year. Had 13 points in 52 games. Playing in the bottom six, which isn't bad production, especially when, Kucherov and those guys are getting the minutes they do. But this year, he actually already has 13 points. I think he's playing next to Barkov is where I usually see him. 7 goals, 6 assists in 17 games, and a +8. Every time I watch this guy, it seems like he's scoring greasy goals, finding a way to make an impact, and has a subtle speed to his game.
Yeah, and I really think that line has been interesting. I was listening to the 31 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick last week, and they were talking about how it's really a fun balance to watch in that you have one of the best two-way centers in the league in Barkov. You've got Verhaeghe, like you said, going to all the greasy areas, finding a way to score goals. And then on the other wing, you've got Anthony Duclair, who has world-class speed. And it's kind of a sense where it's two wingers who kind of playing for their next deal, and Barkov is just banking on it and probably making these guys both a lot of money. So Verhaeghe's been really impressive this season for Florida, and they're actually my stock-up team this week, and he's part of the reason why. So Florida, it's just been incredible what they've been able to do here.
You mentioned that Verhaeghe, Duclair, Barkov line. They all have Corsi for percentages over 57%.
Not bad,
Not
I'd
bad
say.
at all. But yeah, it just seems like they have everything going for them right now. They've had, I wouldn't say a rebound from Alex Wenberg, but he's definitely the player you kind of expected him to be at his cap hit. Like you said, Duclair's finally made an impact. Huberdeau has looked incredible. The pass he had the other night, the spinorama to Alex Wenberg, it just shows the confidence that he has. This is a guy that's been consistently, I think, a 60 and 70 point scorer for that team. And it seems like just because the market he's in, he doesn't get the notoriety or the accolades that he deserves. But if this guy was in Toronto, they'd be talking to him. He'd be a perennial all-star candidate and maybe more than that.
He's been really impressive, and I think it only makes this team all that much better that they can split him and Barkov up and still get consistent scoring, because that's two really impressive lines. And so they are now 7-3 in their last 10. They're sitting at first place in the Central with 26 points. And another story has been Chris Driedger, who's just been unbelievable in net, outplaying his $10 million counterpart, Sergei Bobrovsky. And here's the thing. He's playing that well, and then you've got Spencer Knight and Canada goalie Devin Levi in the pipeline. So the two goalies from the World Junior Gold Medal game, plus Driedger playing way above his pay grade. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that $10 million cap hit.
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do about that, because you can't buy him out. Because what is it? 7 more years left at 10 point mil.
6 more after this, I believe.
You buy that out.
It's not worth it for you.
Yeah, you can't.
So, yeah, that's a long-term problem for Florida, though, because in the short term, it's been nothing but good returns. Another guy I wanted to point out who's been playing really, really good hockey of recent is, for one, Keith Yandle. After everything he went through at the beginning of the year, he's been off to a great start. But also Aaron Ekblad, former number 1 pick, and, kind of flies under the radar, mostly because he's really a defensive defenseman. But 10 points in his first 16 games this year, 3 power play goals, 3 power play assists, shooting at 11%, which might not be completely sustainable, but averaging 25 minutes a night. That's number 1 D production that they've been looking for from him, and it'd be really big for him and Florida if he could sustain that in the long term, and he'd probably get a nice payday from them as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to think so. He's the best defender they have, in my opinion. It's kind of what they expected when they drafted him, right?
I know you said Patrick Hornquist has been impressing you as well. It seems like every time we turn around, that guy's scoring goals.
Yeah, he's aging like fine wine. He always finds a way to muck up things on the power play. And it seems like throughout his career, he's always just scoring the most ugly goals, but they don't ask how, they ask how many.
Exactly. So, good by Florida. Good for them. Chris Driedger, Keith Yandle, Barkov, Verhaeghe, Duclair. I think pretty easy team to root for. So they're our stock up for the week. We're going to move on, though, to stock down. Who do you got?
I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. I could talk ad nauseum about them and, how they struggle. But at the end of the day, they can't win more than 2 games in a row. And even then, they struggle to win back-to-back games. So something needs to change. I don't know if it's the coach, if it's the players, but that they look like a sinking ship right now.
I know you started a trending hashtag on Twitter over the weekend with the initials of TT. We'll just go as far as
Terminate Tortorella. I have been saying this for a few years. Jackets fans might hate it, but I do think it's time for a change.
I don't think it's anything holding it against Torts. He brought the franchise a long way from where they were, and I think he did an admirable job. But
he did. He did his job perfectly. He changed the culture, got rid of the country club atmosphere, and made them a hardworking team. But his style's kind of dated. It's time to move on and get with the times. Terminate Torts.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that so you don't turn this into a 55-minute podcast. But I'll stay in the Central for my stock down. The Dallas Stars, after the hottest start to any COVID-shortened season ever, I guess.
The only COVID.
Yeah, the only shortened season by COVID. But either way, 2-4-4 in their last 10. They've lost 6 in a row. They lost to Columbus, Chicago twice, Carolina twice, and now Florida. I don't know. Everything just seems to be drying up. Hudobin has not been great in net. Jake Ottinger was off to a pretty solid start as their number 2, and it's kind of flurried, snowballed on him. But I don't know. The back end has been all right between Heiskanen and Klingberg, but after that, I don't think Esa Lindell has really stepped up into a role that they needed him to. And I don't know that people expected it to be as evident, but I think this team really misses Tyler Seguin down the middle.
Absolutely. I know people were saying he was overpaid, not playing up to his contract the last few years, but just having him in the lineup slots everyone where they need to be. You have guys playing what I would say out of position, meaning higher in the lineup, harder, more difficult matchups than what they're used to, and that's something that cascades through the team. I do think Dallas is a really good team. Obviously, they showed that through their playoff performance, but without Seguin, if any team's down their best center, it's going to hurt them. So I'm still withholding judgment. I want to see what happens when he comes back, but the streak that they're on right now, they really need to figure it out because Chicago's coming in right on their tail.
Yeah, the Central is not making out how people expected it to be. I think it was kind of expected to be a race between Florida, Carolina, and maybe Columbus for that 4 spot, and now it's like Carolina, Florida, Tampa are the locks, and can Dallas stay ahead of Chicago? I'm not really sure. We were all very out on Chicago, including me, and I'm usually the quickest to criticize Stan, Colleton, and gang, but you know what? They've got the boys playing good hockey. I'm not sure how sustainable it is based on advanced metrics. The Corsi, the shots against have not been great, but Kevin Lankinen's honestly playing at a Vezina level, which is something I never thought would come out of my mouth. And you know what? Patrick Kane is still very much an elite player. Alex DeBrincat is back to his old self. And, they've had a lot of guys step up on the back end between Ian Mitchell, Calvin DeHaan.
Beaudien's looked pretty good.
Nick Beaudin, for a former first-round pick who only made his debut in 1 game last year before COVID shortened the season. And now he's not playing in all situations, but stepping up on the power play and, finding a way to produce. So if they could get a guy like Adam Boqvist going on the back end and continue to get good scoring from Dominic Kubalik, maybe on a little bit more consistent basis, maybe they could catch Dallas. But like you said, not ruling out Dallas yet, but it's definitely been a tough stretch here.
Even then, if they finish in the bottom 10, get a defenseman such as Owen Power, guy like that, get Taves back, Doc back, that could be a team that could fight for a bubble spot next year if they could have that defenseman immediately step in.
Well, not only that, if you consider with the division realignment we could be seeing, you never know where it could go. If divisions stay like they are right now, maybe teams like Tampa have to continue to make cap moves, things like that. They could continue to move their way up. So we will see, but it's been a bumpy ride in the Central for a lot of teams. So,
well, before we exit, I just want to give a shout out to Austin Matthews, 50-50 watch. He's got 18 goals in 19 games. I never thought I'd see it happen, but it could actually happen with him. And he's not scoring like Ovechkin. He's scoring in a multitude of ways, and he's doing it while playing Selke caliber defense. Yeah, I said it. Austin Matthews is playing Selke caliber defense.
Would you play him on your penalty kill, though?
Yes.
Okay.
It goes against what Brian Burke would say, but why not? If he can score shorthanded, I'm down. Just don't block any shots. Just move out of the way.
I will second your sentiment, though. I think this is probably the best chance in our lifetime to have someone go 50-50. Not only that, shout out to the Maple Leafs. I've been very impressed. I think they have made great strides. Getting Wayne Simmons back will solidify that team, and I think they are much improved over the last 2 years.
I think they're missing another veteran that can actually score. No offense to some of those guys, but
second-line winger.
Yeah, second-line winger. A guy, honestly, I think Nick Foligno would be a great fit in Toronto, but I don't know if the Jackets would ever trade him. And then probably a second-pair defenseman, and they could be a serious cup threat.
I don't disagree. And they were not my pick in the North Division, but tip of the cap to Kyle Dubas and everyone in Toronto for constructing a really solid team up there. So, all right, well, we will wrap it up there. Thank you guys for tuning in this week on the StatShot Hockey Podcast. For Nick Vogel, I'm your host, Spencer Brown. We'll catch you guys next week.